Mayor, Council, good to see you all again. Upon leaving the Constitutional Convention, Benjamin Franklin was asked by a woman, "Sir, what have you given us?" To which he replied, "A republic, ma'am, if you can keep it." Many Americans would be surprised to find that the word democracy appears nowhere in our Constitution or Declaration of Independence, nor does it appear in any of the constitutions of any of the 50 states in our nation. You see, our founding fathers did everything in their power to prevent us from having a democracy. Except despite this, our media and public officials have managed to distort our representation in this nation from a republic to a democracy. Samuel Adams, signer of the Declaration of Independence, actually said these words, quote, "Democracies never last long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself." So where do the origins of democracy begin? Well, the word democracy itself comes from two Greek words. The first being demos, meaning people, and the second being kratein, meaning to rule. The rule of the people, majority rule. While this, of course, sounds good in theory, what if the majority decides to take one's home or business, or worse, children? Obviously, there has to be a limit. The flaw in democracy is that the majority isn't restrained. If more than half the people can be persuaded to want something, then they rule. Let's look at the word republic. It stems from two Latin words, res, meaning thing, and publica, meaning public. It means the public thing, the law. A true republic is one where the government is limited by law, leaving the people alone. The founders had a good reason to look upon democracy with contempt. They knew that the democracies in the early Greek city-states produced some of the wildest excesses of government imaginable. In ancient Greece, there was a man named Solon who urged the creation of a fixed body of law that was not subject to the majority whims of a democracy. But where the Greeks never adopted Solon's wise counsel, the Romans did. Based on what they knew about Solon's law, the Romans created the 12 tables of Roman law, and in effect created a republic that limited the power of the government and left the people alone. Since the government was limited, the people were free to produce, with the understanding that they could keep the fruits of their labor. In time, Rome became wealthy and the envy of the world, very much like America was, a beacon of hope to the rest of our world. In the midst of plenty, the Roman people forgot what freedom entailed. They forgot that the essence of freedom is the proper limitation of government. When government power grows, the people's freedom begins to recede. Once the Romans dropped their guard, power-seeking politicians began exceeding the powers granted to them in the Roman Constitution. Some citizens learned that they could elect politicians who would use government power to take property from some and give it to others. Agricultural subsidies were introduced, followed by housing and welfare programs. Inevitably, taxes rose and controls over the private sector were imposed. Soon, a number of Rome's producers could no longer make ends meet and left the country. Productivity declined, shortages developed, and mobs began roaming the streets, demanding bread and circuses from the government. Many were forced to trade freedom for security. Eventually, the whole system came crashing down. They went from a republic to a democracy and ended up with an oligarchy under the progression of the Caesars. Thus, democracy itself is not a stable form of government. Instead, it is the transition from the limited government provided in a republic to the unlimited rule of a small group in an oligarchy. Knowing this, we as Americans are left with only two choices. We can keep our republic, as Benjamin Franklin put it, or we will inevitably end up with an oligarchy, the tyranny of the elite. Thank you.
Kim Field.